Emily Carter clutched Lily as the apartment swallowed her scream. Jacob hurled a final glare, and the door slammed like a judge's gavel. Sirens swelled outside, thin and distant. The hallway bulb flickered, stuttering like her breath. Emily said, "It ends tonight." Lily whispered into her sweater, and silence answered. The framed photos rattled on the wall. Jacob said, "You'll hear from my lawyer," through the wood. Then footsteps retreated. Neighbors held their breath behind peepholes. Emily steadied herself, counting heartbeats. A dish rolled, then settled under the table. She tasted copper and fear. Emily said, "You're safe," and pulled the curtains shut. The sirens faded into city hum. A draft crept beneath the door. Lily asked if bad dreams could walk. Emily said, "Not past me." She locked the chain and pressed her forehead to the cool metal. The room smelled of rain and takeout boxes. Her phone buzzed with unread messages. Pride and panic tangled in her chest. Emily said, "We reset." The living room lamp cast a weak halo. Somewhere above, pipes hissed like whispers. She breathed in, slow and even, and chose to stand. Dawn leaked into the room like a reluctant promise. Emily brewed coffee and counted the hours she had slept on the edge of the couch. Lily padded in with a stuffed rabbit and watched the kettle sigh. Emily said, "We'll make pancakes." The word sounded brave. A neighbor thumped past, and the ceiling answered with a creak. Emily set plates like chess pieces, careful and calm. Lily said, "Will Jacob come back?" The question sat between them like a stone. Emily folded batter into a smooth tide. She said, "Today belongs to us." The radio whispered weather and warnings. A draft curled the curtain hem. Emily stacked pancakes into a small tower. Butter slid down like a golden tear. Lily smiled for the first time since the door slammed. Emily said, "That smile wins." Outside, tires hissed on wet pavement. A siren flickered, then faded. She poured syrup and reached for Lily's hand. Strength flowed like heat from the mug. Breakfast became a truce with the morning. The hallway smelled of bleach and rumors. Emily opened the door to a soft knock. Nora Klein hovered with an anxious smile and a foil pan. Nora said, "I heard noise." Emily balanced gratitude with caution. The pan warmed her hands. Lily waved from the couch and then hid behind the pillow fortress. Nora said, "It gets quieter after storms." Emily nodded and studied the scuffed threshold. Jacob's boot mark ghosted the mat. Emily said, "We are fine." The lie sounded neat and small. Nora glanced at the chain and took a measured step back. A siren sighed far off. Lily whispered something into the rabbit's ear. Emily said, "Thank you for looking out for us." Nora smiled like a porch light. The door clicked gently, leaving silence and the scent of cinnamon. Emily set the pan on the counter and breathed deeper. The apartment felt less alone. Emily gathered documents across the coffee table like armor. Pay stubs, school emails, and photos formed careful rows. Lily colored a sun with extra rays. Emily said, "We show the truth." The printer coughed out a final page. She clipped packets and labeled folders. The living room became a command post. Lily said, "Can we keep the sun bright?" Emily smiled and sealed an envelope. The kettle sang again. She muted it with a quick hand. The clock nudged toward noon. Emily said, "We meet Maya soon." Relief rose at the name. She rehearsed answers in her head, each one steady and clean. The chain on the door glinted like a promise. She stacked the last folder and squared the corners. Lily slid the drawing on top. Emily said, "Perfect cover." Courage felt like paper, held tight. She exhaled and the papers did not tremble. Maya arrived with a knock that sounded like hope. Emily opened to a familiar grin and a tote of legal pads. Maya said, "We prep hard, then breathe." The hug was quick and grounding. They spread papers on the table like a map. Maya traced dates and circled names. Maya said, "We focus on patterns." Lily handed over the bright sun, and Maya pinned it to the folder. She said, "Best exhibit." Emily laughed, thin but honest. The room loosened its jaw. Maya rehearsed questions and pauses. Emily answered in steady phrases. Lily stacked pencils like tiny towers. Maya said, "You have more than enough." Confidence landed between them like a chair pulled out. The clock clicked past noon. Emily said, "I can do this." Maya touched the chain on the door and nodded. The city hummed, patient and wide. Emily's shoulders lowered. A plan was now a path. The school gate clicked, and the afternoon felt thin. Emily scanned the crowd and steadied her breath. Jacob stepped from a parked car like a verdict. Jacob said, "I filed for temporary custody." The words hit like sleet. Emily said, "You are using fear as a tool." He smiled without warmth and held up a folded paper. Jacob said, "Judges like stability, not chaos." She pictured Lily's backpack and the crayon sun inside. Emily said, "Lily needs calm, not threats." Cars hissed over wet asphalt. A crossing guard waved them apart, then looked away. Jacob said, "Your job is shaky, I hear." Her spine went cold at the leak. Emily said, "Stay away from our door." He tucked the paper back like a knife. Children spilled past like sparrows, bright and quick. Emily said, "We will answer in court." He shrugged and turned toward the curb. The gate clicked again, and the crowd thinned to silence. The office hummed with polite engines of doubt. Emily swiped in and met Daniel's careful smile. Daniel said, "HR flagged anonymous concerns." The word anonymous felt staged. She followed him to a glass room where whispers died. Sarah said, "We need clarity on attendance and home issues." The table smelled of disinfectant and coffee ghosts. Emily said, "My performance is documented." Daniel tapped a report and nodded slowly. Sarah said, "Rumors mention a dispute at your building." The hallway reflection split her face in the glass. Emily said, "Personal noise is contained." Daniel said, "We value you, but clients watch optics." The air thinned around the word optics. Sarah slid a form like a gray cloud. Emily said, "I will deliver the quarter plan today." Daniel said, "Do that and update HR by Friday." She left with her posture unbroken and her hands cold. The cafe steamed like a winter breath. Maya arrived with a folder and a stone map in her eyes. Maya said, "Someone near you is feeding Jacob details." The porcelain clinked like small alarms. Emily said, "Only a few know anything." Maya opened the folder and traced dates with a pen. Maya said, "The timing matches your office chatter." The barista called names into warm air. Emily said, "I told Olivia about the HR review." Maya said, "Check your trust circles, then document." A cyclist ghosted past the window in a silver blur. Emily said, "I want proof, not panic." Maya nodded and slid a checklist across. Maya said, "We set boundaries and we watch." The list felt like a ladder in rain. Emily said, "We start tonight." The cups emptied and resolve filled the space. Evening narrowed the street to a tight wire. Emily waited by the curb where headlights stitched white lines. Jacob arrived late and wore a smile sharpened thin. Jacob said, "Sign a schedule or face court chaos." Her pulse knocked once, then steadied. Emily said, "We follow counsel and written orders." He leaned closer, and the air smelled of cold leather. Jacob said, "You always hide behind others." She pictured Lily asleep with the rabbit shielded under her chin. Emily said, "I stand on facts, not threats." A bus sighed to a stop and drowned the edge of his voice. He held up a phone as if witnesses lived inside it. Jacob said, "This can be simple if you bend." She stepped back into the streetlight circle. Emily said, "It will be fair, not bent. His smile cracked, then vanished into the night. The apartment exhaled when the door latched. Emily set her phone face down and let quiet bloom. The lamp painted a small island on the rug. She gathered bills and stacked them by kind. Emily said, "Order is the first mercy." The clock marked each breath with shy ticks. She opened a notebook and wrote names inside a square. Emily said, "We tighten the circle." The kettle warmed, then settled. Outside, tires whispered and faded. She placed Lily's drawing at the top of the stack. Emily said, "We will guard the sun." The chain on the door shone like a thin horizon. She closed her eyes and let the plan sit without wobble. The room accepted her resolve and held it up. Emily sat across from the social worker in a room painted with neutral beige that failed to soften its chill. Ms. Howard shuffled papers with calm precision. Ms. Howard said, "We will review stability factors today." Emily's chest tightened as she placed folders on the table, each one labeled and stacked with care. Lily waited outside with crayons, unaware of the storm disguised as questions. Emily said, "My daughter has consistent routines." Miss Howard lifted her glasses and scanned a note. "Me," she said, "concerns have been raised about household conflict." The word conflict burned like a brand. Emily steadied her voice. Emily said, "Any dispute happens outside Lily's hearing." Clock ticked sharp in the silence. Miss Howard scribbled with pen strokes that sounded like judgment. Emily exhaled and added, "I protect her above all else." The room thickened with quiet weight. Bills spread across the kitchen counter like fallen leaves. Emily traced numbers with tired eyes, her pen circling balances she knew were impossible. The fridge hummed against the silence. She said, "We will stretch what we can." The stack of envelopes tilted like a fragile tower. She opened one letter and read the red ink warning. Lily tugged at her sleeve with a sketch of bright balloons. Emily smiled thinly and said, "That's perfect, keep drawing." She pressed the paper flat and wrote figures in the margin. Her jaw ached from clenching. The kettle whistled but went unanswered. A neighbor's radio leaked laughter through the walls. Emily whispered, "This is survival math." She gathered the bills and tied them with an elastic band, her hands trembling as if wrapping wounds. The cafe corner hummed with muted chatter. Olivia sat across from Emily, eyes shifting with guilt. Olivia said, "I didn't think it would matter." Emily's hand froze over her cup. She said, "You told Jacob about my HR meeting." Olivia bit her lip and nodded. Olivia said, "He pressed me for details." The betrayal slipped like a knife between ribs. "I'm wise doubting. Honey told you I'm sorry." Emily said, "You risked my daughter's future for his questions." Olivia whispered, "I'm sorry I panicked." Emily stood and pushed her chair back slowly. She said, "Trust is not repairable with apologies." Olivia reached out, but Emily's step back left her hand hanging in air. The cafe buzz dimmed under the weight of silence. The hallway echoed with voices raised by accident. Emily froze at the living room doorway as Lily stood clutching her rabbit. She had overheard too much. Lily said, "Is Jacob taking me away?" Her small voice cracked like glass. Emily knelt quickly, pulling her close. Emily said, "No one is taking you without me fighting first." Lily's tears slid onto her shoulder. The TV screen flickered silently in the corner, catching their silhouettes. Emily whispered, "Your place is here." Lily said, "I don't like fights." Emily stroked her hair and said, "I will carry the fight so you don't have to." Outside, a dog barked, indifferent to their fragile world. The table was cleared except for one framed photo of Emily and Lily at the park. Emily touched the glass and straightened her spine. She said, "I will not let her lose her smile." The night carried city hums through the cracked window. Emily pulled out her notebook and began drafting a plan. She listed tasks, court dates, and contingencies in neat lines. She whispered, "This fight will not break me." A surge of exhaustion pressed against her ribs, yet resolve rooted deeper. She glanced at Lily's door and smiled faintly. Emily said, "We will stand taller." The photo shimmered under lamplight, a silent anchor in the storm. The knock came like a ghost returning. Emily froze mid-step, the chain on the door rattling when she peeked through the crack. A face she hadn't seen in years appeared. Michael, her estranged brother. His eyes carried regret and a plea unspoken. Emily said, "Why now?" Michael shifted his weight and replied, "Because I couldn't stay away any longer." The apartment seemed to shrink as memories surged. Lily peeked around the corner, her voice soft. "Who is he?" Emily whispered, "Family we thought was gone." Michael's gaze softened as he said, "I've been watching from a distance, waiting for a moment to matter." The silence after his words felt like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Emily's chest tightened with years of hurt, yet a fragile thread of hope stirred within. The living room brimmed with tension as Michael sat across from Emily, hands folded tightly. Michael said, "I stayed away because I thought I'd only make things worse." Emily's voice trembled as she answered, "You left when we needed you most." Lily perched on the couch, clutching her rabbit, listening without speaking. Michael's eyes glistened under the lamp as he said, "I followed every step, just not close enough to help." Emily crossed her arms, anger mixing with disbelief. She whispered, "Watching doesn't erase absence." The air hung heavy, like dust caught in stale light. Michael leaned forward and said, "But I can help now." Emily's heart pounded with mistrust, yet her lips pressed together in silence instead of refusal. Emily's fingers traced the edge of Lily's, drawing on the table as her voice shook. Emily said, "What do you really want, Michael?" He replied, "To be part of the fight, to fix what I broke." She glanced at the stack of custody documents, the ink like weights pressing down her choices. Lily whispered, "He looks like you." Emily swallowed hard and turned away, her voice clipped, "Don't drag her into this." Michael's shoulders slumped, shame radiating like a shadow. He said, "I'll earn trust, even if it takes forever." Emily clenched her jaw, eyes glistening. A storm of memories flickered, childhood fights, laughter, betrayals, all colliding in her chest. Silence stretched but did not break. The air shifted as Michael revealed a folder tucked under his jacket. He slid it across the table with trembling fingers. Michael said, "I know things about Jacob, things that can help you." Emily froze, fingertips hovering over the folder as if it carried fire. She whispered, "Why didn't you come sooner?" Michael lowered his gaze and said, "I was too ashamed." Lily shifted uncomfortably, sensing the weight of unspoken history. Emily opened the folder and scanned the pages, eyes widening as she found records of Jacob's hidden debts and past altercations. She whispered, "This changes everything." Michael nodded, his voice low, "It's the truth you needed." Emily's breath hitched as a crack of light appeared in the darkness of her fight. The night settled into uneasy quiet as Emily stacked the folder atop her legal documents. She said, "If I use this, I face our past too." Michael's jaw tightened as he replied, "Sometimes wounds have to be opened to heal." Emily looked toward Lily's bedroom door, listening to her soft breaths through the wood. She whispered, "She deserves peace, not legacy scars." Michael leaned back and said, "Peace comes after truth." The room seemed to exhale as if acknowledging the cost of choices ahead. Emily touched the chain lock and steadied herself. She said, "Then we fight with both truth and scars." Her words sealed the moment, fragile yet firm. The storm outside rattled the windows, echoing the war within. The courthouse corridor smelled of polish and tension. Emily's heels echoed as she approached Jacob and his lawyer, both whispering like conspirators. Jacob smirked and said, "You'll lose more than custody." His lawyer added, "We have evidence that paints you unstable." Emily held her breath and steadied her folders. She said, "Truth always finds air." Jacob leaned closer, his voice dripping, "The judge won't see your sacrifices, only your flaws." A tremor ran down her arm, but she tightened her grip on the files. Maya appeared beside her, firm and ready. Maya said, "We fight with facts, not fear." Emily nodded, eyes locked on the courtroom door. Lily's face flashed in her memory, her smile the reason for every step. Emily whispered, "For her, I will not bend." The office blinds cut sunlight into sharp lines as Emily and Maya reviewed strategy. Die lines. Maya circled phrases in a deposition with her pen. Maya said, "They will push the narrative of instability. We counter with structure and consistency." Emily flipped through photos of Lily's school events and whispered, "These are her anchors." The hum of the city outside seeped in like static. Maya looked up and said, "The judge must see a mother who builds, not breaks." Emily inhaled deeply, her pulse steadying. She said, "I've been holding the pieces together for years." Maya touched her hand briefly and said, "Now let them see the weight you carry." Emily's chest filled with resolve as she stacked the documents into neat piles. The evening quiet wrapped around Emily's apartment, like a blanket stitched with worry. Lily sprawled on the rug, coloring a castle with wide strokes. Emily watched, exhausted yet softened by the sight. Lily looked up and asked, "Will you be here tomorrow?" Emily bent down, brushing hair from her daughter's face. She said, "Always, in every way that matters." The rabbit doll lay between them, worn from countless nights of comfort. Emily added, "We face storms together." Lily smiled faintly, then returned to her drawing. Emily whispered to herself, "She is my victory before the verdict." The room glowed with lamplight, fragile yet safe. The cafe's soft chatter dimmed as Emily met Alex, her new companion who had quietly become part of her circle. Alex said, "You look like someone carrying the world." Emily gave a tired smile and replied, "It feels heavier every day." He leaned forward and said, "You're stronger than you think, but you don't have to carry it alone." She looked down at her coffee, the steam swirling like questions she couldn't answer. Emily whispered, "I can't let distraction weaken my focus." Alex said gently, "It's not distraction, it's support." Their eyes met, a moment of warmth against the storm. Yet doubt lingered at the edges of her thoughts. She said, "I need to fight without breaking." He nodded and replied, "Then fight knowing you're not alone." The night before court pressed against Emily's chest like a weight. Papers were stacked neatly on the table, Michael reviewing quietly nearby. Michael said, "This evidence will tip the scale." Emily whispered, "But it also opens scars." He nodded slowly and said, "Truth costs, but silence costs more." Lily slept soundly in her room, the rabbit at her side. Emily exhaled, then whispered, "Tomorrow decides more than custody, it decides who we are." Michael placed a steady hand on the folder and said, "You're not fighting alone anymore." Emily touched the chain on the door, her final ritual before bed, and whispered, "We're ready." The city hummed outside, a steady rhythm before the storm. The courtroom breathed like a beast held on a chain. Emily sat beside Maya, while Jacob whispered to his lawyer with polished calm. Judge Avery lifted a file, and paper sounded like thunder. Maya said, "We anchor to routine and care." Emily nodded and pictured Lily's son drawing, bright and brave. Jacob glanced over with a smirk that curdled the air. The clerk called the case, and time tightened to a wire. Emily said, "I am ready," though her pulse skittered. Maya slid a timeline forward like a steel rail. Jacob's lawyer rose, smooth as glass, and asked to admit rumors as fact. Maya said, "Foundation first," and the judge agreed. Emily steadied her hands on the folder Michael had delivered. The room narrowed to a path she would not leave. The first witness spoke with careful neutrality, but the dates wobbled under pressure. Maya said, "Please read the timestamp aloud." The witness faltered as the record contradicted Jacob's claim. Jacob's jaw flexed, patience fraying at the edges. Emily felt the room tilt toward possibility. Maya opened Michael's folder and marked a page. Maya said, "This account shows a withdrawal that night." The ledger glinted like a lighthouse against fog. Jacob's lawyer objected, smooth and late. Judge Avery said, "Overruled," and the gavel's echo stitched the air. Emily breathed deeper, each inhale a rung on a ladder. The witness admitted uncertainty, and silence thinned into truth. Jacob stared at the table as if it might lie for him again. Emily took the stand and felt the wood steady her spine. Maya said, "Describe Lily's daily routine." Emily spoke of breakfast rituals, homework corners, and bedtime stories that stitched courage. Jacob's lawyer rose and said, "Isn't it true chaos followed your home?" Emily kept her eyes on the judge and answered, "Conflict stayed at the threshold." The room leaned closer, held by the honesty of small details. She described the night the door slammed and the quiet she rebuilt. Emily said, "Lily's world is predictability and care." The lawyer pressed, sniffing for fracture, and found none. Emily held her breath, then released it like a vow. The court reporter's keys pattered like rain on metal. Judge Avery watched with a stillness that asked for truth and nothing else. Maya called Michael, and the air sharpened to a blade. Michael said, "I withheld contact, but I kept records that matter now." He named debts Jacob hid and disputes masked by charm. Jacob's lawyer objected, then recoiled as documents met the standard. Judge Avery said admitted, and the pages landed like anchors. Jacob shot a glare that tried to rewrite history. Emily stared forward and did not move. Michael said, "I am here to repair what distance broke." The line carried apology without excuse. The gallery murmured, then cooled under the judge's gaze. Emily gripped the rail and felt the fight tilt. The truth stood up and refused to sit. Closing arguments moved like tides against stone. Maya said, "This case is not about noise. It is about nurture shown in proof." She mapped routines, attendance, and quiet repairs. Only love sustains. Jacob's lawyer warned of optics and spun storms from mist. Emily listened and held Lily's smile in her chest like a lantern. Judge Avery lowered her glasses and weighed the room. The verdict arrived with measured words that remade the air. "Judge Avery," said primary custody to Emily, with structured visitation and compliance orders. Relief surged, bright and blinding, then stung with the cost named. Emily nodded, tears held in strict lines. She whispered, "For Lily we go on," and the gavel sealed the path ahead. The courtroom's echoes faded, leaving Emily in the corridor where silence pressed heavier than judgment. Michael walked beside her without words, and Maya whispered, "You did it." Relief draped her shoulders, yet scars hummed beneath the surface. Emily touched the folder, now just paper rather than a weapon. She thought of Lily's laughter waiting at home, untouched by legal terms. Emily whispered, "Victory never feels light," and Michael answered softly, "But it is still victory." She exhaled slowly, her chest aching with the price paid. The storm was over, but the sky still held clouds. The apartment was quiet when she returned, the chain sliding shut with finality. Lily rushed into her arms, small arms clutching tightly. Emily whispered, "We're safe." Lily asked, "No more fighting?" Emily kissed her hair and said, "No more storms we cannot face." The rabbit doll was caught between them, as if holding history with them both. Emily felt her knees weaken under the weight of relief and love. She closed her eyes and breathed in the smell of crayons and pancakes, grounding herself in a future she could finally believe in. Later that night, Emily sat on the couch with Lily asleep across her lap. The TV flickered softly, muted, casting shadows that danced like memories. Emily whispered, "You are my anchor." The room smelled of rain drifting through the cracked window. Her phone buzzed with messages of congratulations she ignored. She stroked Lily's hair, feeling the rise and fall of her breath. Emily whispered, "We survived, but survival must become living." Her voice was fragile yet firm. The silence became comfort, no longer enemy. The next morning, Emily brewed coffee slowly, her hands steady for the first time in weeks. She looked out at the city as sunlight streaked between clouds. Michael entered quietly, offering a small nod before leaving them space. Emily whispered, "A new chapter." Lily padded into the kitchen, hair messy, asking, "Pancakes again?" Emily laughed gently and said, "Every Saturday from now on." Hope unfolded in her chest, not loud but steady. The world outside was still sharp, but inside she felt a shield rising stronger than fear. That night, Emily stood by Lily's bedroom door, listening to the soft rhythm of her child's sleep. She whispered, "We are stronger now, and we will never stop fighting." She placed a hand on the door, steady and certain. In the quiet, no chains rattled, no shouts pierced, only peace that carried weight. Emily walked to the window and watched the city lights flicker like stars, no longer threats but promises. She smiled, a real one, unmasked, unbroken. Tomorrow would still be uncertain, but tonight was victory carved in love.